Hi guys, welcome to MIDP Novice 2017. OG, we have one from Indian.
Being a top 10 world's best speaker isn't easy, but Jasmine did it anyway. Didn't do this just because of an affirmative action that says, oh, okay, so certain women should be allowed to enter the debating scene. Certain women should be in the adjudication pool. No, she did it out of true grit. She did it out of proving that she's just as good as any other man, regardless of people think that, regardless of how some people think that men are better at speaking. And this is the representation that we want the feminist movement, or anybody for the matter of fact, to believe as they move on into life, as they move on into how we perceive women and how we perceive women in a large scale in the political scene or as a CEO. Today from Site Opening Government, we are going to be very simple. We're going to prove to you how we actually get to preserve or have a better representation of women, and we can actually better tackle these feminist problems. Once if we prove that to you, we win today's debate. But first, allow me to characterize to you about what is the fight for women in a larger scale here, like putting them in a bigger position towards people and how people perceive it. Because what we need to understand is that what we want to prove to people at the end of the day is simply this: that women can do it just as good as men. You know, this is what we want people to understand. And what we want to do as the feminist movement is actually to just create the avenue for women to be able to do so in the first place. In my speech today, I'm going to be comparing two things to you. Firstly, on how it's problematic and not practical for us to actually, for this woman, or if I was a woman, to take this parliament position rather than the CEO position, simply because she would not be able to make as much of a big difference in the parliament than she would as a CEO. But firstly, let me characterize to you on how this societal perception works in the status quo. Because what we need to understand is how people will actually perceive this woman that enters this political scene. So you see, the general election is going to happen, and she's going to think, okay, the political party is going to win already nonetheless. Okay, so how are voters going to look at this per se? Number one, they're going to see as a form of, just filling up the blanks of equality so that, okay, we can say that women have some form of representation. Why is this particularly harmful? Two reasons. Number one, because when this woman is in the parliament per se, she will get certain narrative, she'll get neglected out of positions simply because people are going to say that, oh, you did not earn the votes of the people, you did not earn this position to be here the same way all the other people were here. Hence, whatever you say it's not going to weigh any weight towards the change of the people. And this is particularly harmful because we need to understand is that what we want people to think when we see a woman in the parliament, to say that, okay, women can be politicians too. We want them to be the same way as men. The problem is we do not have that how men and women enter politics or enter this political department. This becomes a great problem where it's actually that men arise when they say that, okay, the fight for feminism isn't fair. It's about female over women. This is when anti-feminism groups come and say, okay, you're not fighting for equality here, you're fighting for the rights of women over men. And this is particularly harmful to the feminist movement simply because that is not what we are fighting for. We are not fighting for the fact that women are needy and therefore need extra help that we don't give towards men. And this is what we are particularly against, and this is the narrative that side opposition stands for if they go through with today's debate. But more importantly, because on the second level, it's at the end of the day, on a practical level of basis, regardless of whether you join, you're a politician, whether you're a CEO, who will actually be able to make a definite change? And this is where we find it highly more probable that as a CEO position you can do so. Why do we say so? Because we need to understand how the political scene already works. Because we have to understand that voters, taxpayers already compromise of women, which means that politicians already have that inherent value to take into account the voices of women when they make certain policies and stuff like that. Because if you do not take into the count of the needs of women, you're going to lose so many voters. And this is something that has already been in the political scene for such a long time, regardless of whether there are women in the parliament per se. So the conclusion of this is basically that the fight for women in the political scene is already there. We do not deny the fact that having a symbolic symbol of a woman being there in the parliament per se will have some form of strengthening towards certain women, but we are willing to trade this off if we can actually achieve something greater if this woman was a CEO. And this is where I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of this woman if actually was a CEO. Because what we need to understand here is there's so many different types of problems that women face, and you want to try to curb sexism. For example, unequal pay, the fact that women are emotional and all these problems stuff. Because if you look at the workplace here, the difference between the political scene and MNCs per se, private companies which are dominant based on men, and where men can make objective decisions to not choose a woman simply because she's a woman, and because I'm a CEO, I can make the executive decision. It doesn't have to be something that people agree on. And this is highly problematic because this is where women do not have a say. So the objective difference that I'm trying to draw here to you is that women already have a say in politics and fighting for certain issues in the political scene, but they do not have the same say as they do in these MNCs and in this multinational corporation scenes. Before I move on, yes?
Sir, do you think that in the corporate environment, you're making the idea of fighting for isn't a hollow idea?
No, because here's the difference. This is when I draw the parallel just now to the fact of affirmative action. When we see that this woman who deserved that position as CEO, who worked her ass off just to get that CEO position, is now up there, and now that she can make sure that all these like sexist policies, all these sexist laws are not there, and all these other laws, and to make sure that there is equality in these MNC companies can be ensured. And this is the difference that we can bring here, because this woman, people do not perceive this CEO as, oh, she's there because of this action, she's there because she's a woman. No, she's there because she's better than me, and that is it. And this is the mindset that we want to create in the minds of the people. Because here's the difference is, number one, when she is a CEO, she can make objective decisions to ensure that just not just in those other objective difference here. We have to understand the difference, the power that a politician holds and the power of a CEO holds. A politician can only have certain forms of influence or say, before it's even passed in Congress, or they can really try to influence what people say. But a CEO can actually make executive decisions to prevent this. What we are simply saying is that, number one, the fact that we need women's support for this thing to actually go through, and we need men's support the same way. We lose men's support when this narrative that women are only there because they are women is harmful in the political scene. Rather than taking this seriously, we feel it's so much more strategic, because number one, we get to preserve this mentality that, okay, women are there because they deserve it. This is the mentality one. Number one, we preserve that mentality, which is how we actually get better representation. And secondly, how we can actually better tackle these issues, because they can actually make an objective decision to actually out these kind of policies which don't allow women to get equal pay, to make sure that there is a total meritocracy system within this MNC, get the position that they, not simply they are women. And this is what we are fighting for outside OG.
I think the Prime Minister failed to specifically tell you what actually affirmative action in politics actually does, especially within an election. When it comes to an election, you're not being forced through an election and being voted into the cabinet minister just like that. No, you still have to go through the vote, but the difference is that you're given more thought to your position as a woman within the election is also given. Why? Because men also start out with an unfair advantage. Political parties are willing to donate more to men. Why? Because there's a popular perception within the people that women aren't able to be natural leaders because of a period of some sort. That's simply not true. And affirmative action actually fights against that. Now, going on to my substantives, I'm going to make, there's going to be three burdens within, there's going to be two burdens within side of opening opposition that we have to prove within this debate. First is that how do we make the fight for feminism not become hollow within the political works, and second is that we need to talk about how actually a female cabinet minister has more power than the CEO, and how they actually can execute that power to do feminist agendas. Now, going on to my first argument regarding how working in a corporation makes the idea for fighting feminism something that is hollow. Later, please. Now, when you're working in a corporation, what you have is that you have a profit incentive to actually sell things and to make money, and you're also tied down by what your board of directors want you to do. So, for example, if they want you to fight for feminism, you're going to try to do it. But the difference is that the fight you're going to fight for feminism is not to actually further feminist causes like helping women get abortion rights, helping women become healthier by giving them by making certain procedures cheaper for them. No, what you're going to do instead is just trying to sell them a product with something that has a feminist tagline tagged to it. That's what corporate feminism that I have been talking is, and that's something that has been failed to be answered by the Prime Minister when he just said that they'll be fine, they got affirmative action when they become a Prime Minister. No, when compared to being a cabinet minister, whereby you can actually craft policies that specifically help women. Say, for example, you specifically force a policy that gives women cheaper scanning for certain kinds of cancer. That's more helpful to women than selling them a product that just has a feminist tagline to it. And that's the difference on what we're doing. And that's the comparative on what we're both doing here. Now, going on to another point regarding how you're not actually driven by profit and why that's good. Being a cabinet minister, yes, you're still susceptible to certain kinds of political corruption. We'll thank you later. But the difference is, panel, is that when you're a cabinet minister, the difference is that you at least have some notion that you want to do good to your constituency and the entire country at large, and that position whereby you can create policies actually has more broader implications than just doing your best to try and market a new product, which is what team government is trying to do. And that's better than that's better because your work will be seen in a better light because you're doing it out of goodwill at least, rather than just a profit incentive by the people. Yes.
Like you acknowledge that problem. It's the problem that we want to tackle.
I'll answer that. The problem with site opening government's idea is that when you're working in a corporation, you're actually just targeting a specific narrow market. Whereas when you're working as a cabinet minister, what you're doing is you're actually targeting the entire country at large, and that just makes your work much more valuable than what a CEO ever does. And the difference is another point regarding being driven by profit incentive as a CEO when you're compared to a cabinet minister is that it's harder to believe that you're trying to do good when you're being paid what 1,000 times more than your average worker. So how are you going to have a position of moral high ground to fight for feminism when the person at the lowest rung of the corporate ladder is being paid a pittance compared to you? That's the difference between a cabinet minister, in the sense that their cabinet ministers actually have more moral high ground and they're actually doing more work in goodwill compared to a CEO, which is just trying to sell products. Now, going on to my other point regarding how it's better to be a representative driven by goodwill, is that being a CEO, what you're often doing is that you're trying your best to sell a product which might not necessarily create broader change within the people, and that's quite sad because you're just wasting your potential as if you just opt in to be a CEO rather than just being a representative where you can craft policies. Before that, any other questions for me? Yes.
We will talk about how people will have business incentive to do something. Like, have you ever thought of politicians can also have political incentive to
Like I said, assuming what the motion said regarding being the cabinet minister has been a feminist agenda, then she has a political incentive to actually do good for the feminist agenda. Certain kinds of agenda that you have when you enter politics is good in general for everyone. Feminist agendas are quite good in this case that we're talking about. Now, another thing that I'd like to talk about is that how women are actually being heard more, in the sense that when there's a woman at the head of when you're making a policy crafted for women specifically, it's better for a woman to be at the helm of the ship rather than just a man rather than just a council of men. What do I mean by this? In the recent healthcare bill that was voted on by the Republican Congress, part of the reasons why it was so unpopular was because it was discussed among the council of old white men within a room within Congress. And that's quite terrible. Why? Because you don't get the voices of minorities, say for example, women helping to craft those policies. By having a woman at the helm of at least one cabinet position, you're at least allowing a different kind of voice to play into the discussion when you're making policies. And that's quite more important than just selling a product or marketing a product. And with all of those things, they also add up to this. The idea is much more meritocratic than compared to being a CEO. Why? Because being a cabinet minister, you actually have to gain the trust of people. You actually also have to gain and do good for your constituency. That is something that is something better than compared to being a CEO, where your idea is just to maximize the amount of profit only, and the only way that you can get up the corporate ladder, you just try to make more money for your company. And in the end, when you're comparing the altruistic nature of a cabinet minister compared to just a profit incentive driven CEO, you'll be likely to choose an altruistic cabinet minister. With that, I'm proud to propose.
Can you pass me off? Oh, okay. Actual change does not happen and cannot be achieved when you simply give the minority or the oppressed what they need, but instead when they actually earn it and when they actually fight for it. That is when actual change happens. They think that when you take it at a larger scope, that when you have a politician in place just because you're in a higher position of power, automatically all families' problems will be solved. No, Nevin already gave you a 7-minute speech on how representation in CEO positions are important, and we'll further prove to you today on why we best prove our burden on our side of the debate, right? So first of all, a few rebuttals to their side of the house. So his point was, how do we make the fight for feminism not become hollow? See, this is when they assume that simply because you're in a lower position of power, that automatically means that the fight is hollow. We tell you no. Doesn't mean just because you're a CEO compared to a politician, which obviously you have a larger crowd, larger audience and stuff like that, larger scope, doesn't mean it's hollow, right? We still have objective action, in fact, better objective action on our side of the house, which I will prove to you. See, as a CEO, he wanted to say this, as a CEO, you can't fight the bigger problems, right? You can only look at it as, it's only like one-dimensional kind of problems that you face. But you see, the things that you want to fight for as a politician in government on your side are already being fought for in status quo. Like Nevin told you, there are already checks and balances in place because women are taxpayers and women are citizens of the country, right? So the parliament has an incentive to also provide for the women in the country. They can't just ignore women. So that's one thing. Another thing is, when you suggest things in parliament as women now simply because of affirmative action, the other male politicians are now going to say, oh, she's only here because she wants to preserve the rights of women. She's only here because of affirmative action. She doesn't actually deserve to be here like the rest of us who worked our ass off. See, we don't want that perception to exist in parliament, right? Because that perception is what's going to hurt the feminism movement as a whole. Because then, now people of power actually think of women as useless and undeserving of positions of power. This is the perception that they will create in people on their side. So what's the trade-off now? The trade-off is, sure, we trade off the larger scope. We don't give a shit about the larger scope in today's debate, right? What we want in today's debate is objective action, which I will prove to you why CEOs are better equipped to and have objective when you're a politician, right? So next, they had to, next, my point will be on why is this more likely to have an effect on what women want to pursue, right? So now, like I told you, the support for women to be, the support for women in parliament and checks and balances already exist to ensure that the interests and best interests of women are already preserved. Which means that now the things that are missing are women in position of power in private companies, in MNCs, right? Because we rarely see those things kind of in today's world. Because now, why is this more important, right? Because the representation of women in these kinds of positions of power and not in larger scope is much more important because we have that less nowadays. Like male CEOs
MNC incentive compared to female CEOs to preserve the rights of women in those companies. For example, a woman goes through sexual harassment in that company or is being paid less, right? A male CEO is going to think in this case, am I going to preserve the reputation of my company? Am I going to risk the reputation of my company? Am I going to risk the shares of my company or the value of my company going down? Or should I just put it aside, put it under the rug? Now, the male is going to say put it under the rug. Because why? Because as a male, you have less of an incentive to care for the best interest of women. But compared to a woman CEO, when she sees her own gender being sexually harassed, especially when you're in a position of power where you're able to tackle that thing, she won't care about the reputation of the company anymore. She will still care about it, but she will care more about preserve the rights of women, to being able to take care of women in their own country. This is when she'll be able to hire more female workers, pay females equally as men, right? This is when she'll be able to curb the problem of sexual harassment in workplaces, compared to when you have men CEOs who don't have that same incentive. Sure.
How can those things not are mutually exclusive to side?
Okay, no, we just talked to you. We never give you a 7-minute speech on why the politician is only there because of when you become a politician on your side, you're only there because of affirmative action. Secondly, that means other male politicians are going to doubt you. They're not going to listen to you as they would like on our side. And lastly, we already told you about how there are checks and balances in place. Like this is one thing that we never heard a response from LO, right? Because he needed to respond to the fact, why do you still need of power when there already exist checks and balances in place for women, for the parliament to preserve the rights of women. So that needs response, because that is very significant. The fact that we have checks, and the fact that we have the parliament is incentivized to care. These are not little things. Like parliament doesn't just care for women because of feminism. They care for women because of society. They pay tax. All these reasons prove to you on why women will still be cared about in parliament. But that's different in privatized companies, right? Because women don't pay privatized companies. In privatized companies, it's a whole new different world compared to outside. Because in privatized companies, sexism can be, you can get away with sexism. You can get away with sexual harassment. And a male CEO will be less incentivized to care for all these things because it doesn't affect him directly. It doesn't affect him in any way compared to a female CEO when she sees disparity, when she sees discrimination, and when she sees discrimination that happens to women, that her kind is being discriminated against simply because she is women. We don't want this perception on our side. See, they're going to keep on coming up here and talking to you on why being a female politician is better, because you have a larger scope and then you can have better that means you can have better action for women. But that's not the truth. We already told you on what other female politicians will think and what they will say and why there's already checks and balances in place to preserve the rights of women. See, now what is needed is to preserve the rights of women in MNCs, to preserve the rights of women in multinational companies where their rights are put to shit, right? Where they aren't even cared about in MNCs when there's a male CEO in place. So this is what we want to fight for. The larger scope that they want you to think about isn't even a larger scope, right? You just have a larger crowd, you have a you speak to larger people, you speak to more people. But that doesn't mean objective action can take place like it does on our side. Go with our side, because we truly preserve the rights of women. We truly make sure women are appreciated and not undermined like in their side. Thank you.
In the fight to push for feminist agenda, right? The feminist movement has always been working hard to make sure that they are out there, to make sure that they are visible, to make sure that when they do something, a lot of people see it. Therefore, there is there is no saying that you should not talk about a larger crowd here, because the larger crowd is the one thing that the feminist movement needs to gain traction to actually achieve change in society. I will prove to you a few things in my speech. Number one, how this is actually better for feminist movement, and how the portrayals in status quo between a female cabinet minister and a CEO, and how the female cabinet minister portrayal is better. And number two, I will prove to you what happens if something were to go wrong within your career as a CEO or as a female cabinet minister, and who will rise better and stronger from these obstacles. But before that, a few responses to cite government's case, right? They told you that when you become a female minister, your position as a minister is very tokenistic in nature. That you're only there because you are fulfilling a quota, because you are given affirmative action, because you are a product of a policy that is meant for women to help women better, right? This shows that this side is very concerned about perception. We say that we are not concerned about perception in the long run if it's going to achieve a lot of change, if it's going to push for something that you believe in for so long, and that is the feminist agenda. Furthermore, we say that these women that we're talking about in this motion has the obligation to accept the position as a female cabinet minister. She owes it to the feminist movement, affirmative action in the first place. With affirmative action in the first place, because feminists actually lobby for it, because they think that the political world is something that is very male-centric, therefore they push this affirmative action in the first place. Secondly, Keohin told you that we already have check and balance in society. Therefore, we don't need to female to become ministers to actually achieve change in society. That is not true, because when a lot of subsidized healthcare for women were taken back, there were a lot of adverse reaction against it, right, coming from women, because the discussion was mostly only discussed within men who are white, men who are old, right? We say that in society itself, there's already incentive for us to have more female politicians in status quo, right? This is to make sure that discussion that happened following that decision are not one-dimensional in nature. Therefore, there is already a need for women to take up this affirmative action and be in the political sphere in the first place. Furthermore, you do not have a lot of gravity when it comes to decision-making when you are working for MNCs as a CEO, right? Because the one who has the heaviest vote in that particular company is the one with the largest share, and you do not necessarily have the largest share as soon as you become a women CEO in that particular company, right? Moving on to my substantives. Now, how is this better for the feminist movement if you were to accept the position of a female cabinet minister as compared to a CEO, right? Let's see how these two careers are often, how they are portrayed in mainstream media or in status quo in general. For female cabinet minister, right, you are looked at as a woman who break glass ceilings. Even with affirmative actions, we say that this is good, right? Because whatever achievement that you achieve, whether it's marginal at best, it will be held at a high regards, right? And you will be put on a higher pedestal. People will have higher expectation on you. And we say that this higher expectation is good because it will pressure you as a female politician to prove yourself more that you are really the one who broke the glass ceiling in the first place. Therefore, there are more room for you to prove that you are worthy of that position in the first place, despite receiving affirmative action. Furthermore, as a female politician, you look upon as a feminist icon, right? As a positive role model for young girls, for someone who's a woman should be, right? This will give you a lot of visibility to the populace, right? Because even when you never declare yourself as a feminist, for example, as a politician, people see you as an icon. The feminist movement still regard you as an icon because you are a woman in the first place, because you are a politician that is going to be expected to give highlights to female issues in cabinet. Therefore, when you are also a spokesperson for the feminist movement, right? Therefore, when you become a politician, you're capable of making people buy into the narrative of feminist causes, right? People are more likely to empathize you because you are a woman. Therefore, your opinions on issues regarding what women has to face on the ground is going to be more valuable. You are also seen as someone who is strong because you can survive in politics in a very cruel male-centric world because you are ambitious. Let's look at the portrayal for women CEO, right? As a CEO, you are a woman who managed to achieve tremendous success in life. You are in charge of the life of so many people because you get to decide how much that they paid. You get to lead people through the corporate world. But your ability as a feminist when you are a CEO is still are, number one, still answerable to a board. If they're as brutal or as misogynist as this side defined to you, like OG characterized, a lot of these changes that they are trying to bring in this world is still not going to happen anyway, right? And why do we prefer the portrayal of a female minister more than a female CEO, right? Because we believe that when you are a female minister, you provide feminism with more visibility. Visibility is very important to gain traction for feminist movement in the first place, especially when it is a movement that is highly misunderstood by a lot of people. How do you get this visibility? As a female politician, you will get more appearances on TV, for example. Your name will be on the news. A lot of people, even children, will get to know you, right? You are directly involved in decision-making processes for matters that concern you as a feminist, also women on the ground. These two things are looked upon as feminist icon, but we think that in our world, politicians can do it better because they can appeal to a lot more people. Not everyone can relate to making $100,000 US per hour, right? But when you are a politician, your job prerogative requires you to understand people from different walks of life. A lot of people can relate to you because you speak about issues that concerns them, whether they are rich or poor. Now, secondly, what happens if things go wrong, right? We admit that not everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows if you become a politician or if you become a CEO. Throughout your careers, you might go through obstacles, for example, scandals. The question now becomes, who can rise up better and stronger after these scandals and obstacles, and who will better regard it as a feminist icon even after a lot of things go wrong, right? We think that it is the female politician that can do this better because you can still prove and redeem yourself by the policy that you manage to push for to the table. For example, people will now tell out narratives that says, oh, she's always been there for her constituencies. I don't give a shit about the sex scandal that she's involved in. We believe that you can still come up stronger after these obstacles. And because you're involved in real life interaction, your job will force you to care for not just individuals in the corporate world, but for also women and other individuals on the ground. This is more viable as compared to becoming a CEO, and if people will still point it on you doing it because of profit. Thank you.
The change in opening houses was about whether the affirmative action was good or no. CG will be the only person in this debate to tell you that what happens even when we have affirmative action. Should they actually accept the offer or should they reject the offer? That's the debate that we're going to bring to today's power. This is how we will say that why even when you don't accept the offer, how it doesn't hijack the narrative of feminist movement, and how now it doesn't become a feminist icon, but rather be a political icon, and that's not the feminist movement we want to fight to begin with, right? So let's talk what opening opposition I want to talk about. You want to say that this is why you need female politicians, because they're able to cater policies as to better. This is contingent on the fact that the party are always liberal people, are not conservative white men who think that, yeah, whatever, right? And this is the thing that we don't agree to begin with, right? And they say that, here's the thing, politicals are not driven by profit, right? We could say our side also are not driven by a profit, but rather politicians are driven by fame, right? Because all in the political spectrum. So therefore, they are more likely to trade off whatever feminist values they want to bring up, right? Because they know more voters are male voters to begin with. So if they could trade off the minority female voters and depend on the male voters, I think they are far more likely, and therefore it could always remain relevant in politics to begin with, right? Also, I wanted to highlight that there's no moral high ground in business CEOs, right? Without that now, moral high ground, because more likely they're going to be like, if I want to be famous, I can do so. I'll further clarify as to what not, right? Here's the thing, that they also want to say that you can break glass ceilings on political spectrum. We tell you, in business, you're also breaking glass ceilings. But what's the difference is that in political, you represent the party, right? Not the feminist movement. At least in the CEO, now you represent individually as a feminist movement, as a feminist in comparison on your side becomes more political incentive to begin with, right? So let us talk about what we want to say in this debate, right? Because now we want a more, if your side will create a political icon, we say on our side will create a better feminist icon, right? No, thank you. So what do we want to prove at this debate, right? We want to strengthen our ability to fight for this better feminist movement, right? So our outcome is simple, right? We want more. We are okay if the policy is not being passed, but at least these people could start from somewhere and constantly push for things to happen to begin with, right? So let us understand how politics works, right? Because as a politician, you cannot remain neutral and unbiased, right? Because more likely you're not being relevant at the society beginning. Even when you are more likely to be in control of the party. Not that when you have a woman to begin with, a minority, there's no reason for you to go, right? Because men are not going to listen. We already have you in the political party. It's good enough already. Therefore, we shouldn't go far to begin with, right? And how does it affect the image, right? Because now you lose out everything and you cannot do everything. Because why political parties always incentivize to stay relevant? If being relevant means to cater to more male people, I think the political party will always lose out the woman and don't care, right? And therefore, when this happens, you're more willing to trade off your family's fight, and therefore you jeopardize the fight as a whole, right? Simple, right? Why we don't want this to hijack feminism and become a political thing? Here's the thing: when you have in politics, you have a larger image you pander to people. You have to know that politics are dominated by men. So you cannot say that you just only want to cater to the woman's interest. You have to cater to the strong interest of men. Therefore, you have political restrictions to begin with. Because when you're already in politics, therefore there's no likely for a man to actually listen to you, and therefore, even if any policy is being passed, you lose the ability to stand up for yourself. Why? This is when there's no representation to you, because having you in the politics is enough representation. At least on our side, when you have CEOs, even if the CEO is not there, you can have other women coming out and being CEO in other companies, right? There's a better representation on our side. No, thank you, right? Because here's the thing: the image, this is when you trade off the empowering. Why you cannot fight? Because if there's a policy that harms women, for example, that political party believes that abortion shouldn't happen, therefore this is the one the woman cannot criticize, right? Because you go against the principle of the party. This is when going against the principle of the party, you're more likely to shut down. Therefore, your fight for feminism can never happen, right? Even if you further voice out, you're more likely to kick out from the party, right? And therefore, you can never stay relevant in the political spectrum, and therefore, you cannot push support for women to begin with, right? Therefore, when you're being kicked out from the party, there are no more policies that you can be pushed. People don't want you, right? And it harms the feminist movement as a whole. Why? Because number one, you're being condemned to the max, right? Saying that you already given something and you don't want to utilize it to the max. Now you create a shift in discourse, because white women are not, now people don't want to listen to the feminist movement. We're not likely to focus as to why she leave the political party, and they focus on this and not likely to listen, and therefore to space out forever what they want, right? So why CEO, right? Because CEO, you cannot hijack the image, right? Because they're independent of politics, meaning that oftentimes, no thank you.
What happens to the fact that a lot of feminist icons in the past are political icons to begin with?
Here's the thing: because even they're political icons, therefore people will say because of the political party, therefore she fight, not because of feminism. That's the high narrative that we don't want our side. We want you to fight because of feminism, not because of your political driven party, right? So therefore, back to my speech, right? Why CEO? Because you cannot hijack the image, because they're independent from politics. Therefore, always they're representing themselves. Even to the worst case, they're only representing their company to begin with, right? So therefore, they always do things individually, and they can always fight for individually representation in feminism to begin with, right? Therefore, you can always lead a company, and they can always voice out. They are more likely not to push out, right? Because now they fight independently and not want to cater to all the men, right? Screw all the men. These are with a woman company, right? And therefore, there is no exclusive way company saying that you need to discriminate women. So therefore, you could always go out. But in the political spectrum, if you say that we don't believe that abortion is good, you cannot voice out, because these are people think that we think this is the best for society, therefore we should exert this. Even if it harms your woman, we are okay with trading those off, right? So here's the thing: even we are being kicked out from being a CEO company, CEO, why are we okay, right? Because being kicked out, we still can be relevant on the other side. We can still be another company and can still push forward. If in politics you're being kicked out, you're more likely to cannot stay relevant already. People are going to say that we give you one chance, you never utilize the chance, therefore you don't deserve another chance. That's the things that we don't want on our side, right? What's the best case on their side, right? Because they say they want policies to go. Here's the thing: you cannot advance and push for other issues. If you have representation, enough. No need to empower, no need to go gender, no need to remove gender wage gap. You cannot benefit out of it. what's their worst case on their side, right? Because white privileged men are going to say they're given already a spot, and therefore we restrict from you from any action, and we don't think you deserve to be anything. Therefore, now it doesn't be it now there's a fight for feminism, but become more political driven to begin with, right? So what has CG told you in debate? Number one, we don't want this to be a political icon, but rather we want this to be a strong, independent feminist icon. Secondly, we don't want this fight for feminism to be hijacked by political, but we all want to stand for feminism as a whole. But with all those reasons, I'm very proud to propose.
We think there's more to a political change. We think a political change is able to make laws. Political change is able to structure how society works. A political change is able to dictate how companies who actually do victimize their workers into a better society, right? Let's look at one thing. Site opening only tells you how you can make a change as a CEO, but never did they tell you in a comparative how much impact will that CEO make and how much impact can she make within a political sphere, right? Because that only came in closing government. But understand this, right? It doesn't seem logical for someone who works in the CEO and then suddenly be the only people who fight for feminism, right? Because we think these things are mutually exclusive. You can also be in a political party and still stand for feminism. You can still be the face of people who fight for feminists, right? We need to understand a few things because this debate lacks in clarification, right? What can you do as a politician, right? You can have more airtime. When you campaign, like you can have more time. As a politician, you're going to campaign. When you campaign, you don't only get to know the different problems that happen in society, but you get to convince people whatever policies that they can change, right? You get to convince people why your policies matter, why your policies can make a change, right? You think it's a platform for women to feel represented, right? We think that platform is necessary because it gives people hope that there are people fighting for you, that it incentivizes feminists to fight the good fight, that there are people in that structure who's going to do something for you, right? We think that's why political change matters. We think it's a platform of hope because being in politics means you're able to control what the state is going to do, right? We think even in our worst case scenario, which I'll talk later, even if we cannot make action, we'll have more discourse. Even if we cannot make a discourse, our discourse will be more impactful with whatever discourse that will happen in your world, right? Because then later, this is how we'll distinguish ourselves from opening. Because opening only tells you what happens with affirmative action, right? How it's going to deteriorate the feminist movement. But I'll tell you the impact of when you go into as a CEO, what amount of change you can make in comparative to change that you're able to make as a politician, right? Because you have to understand the only change that you're able to make as a CEO are changes like wage gaps, are changes like harassment that happens only in companies. Which means if you logically think people are privileged enough to get jobs, means at the end of the day, the fight for feminism that happens as a CEO will always be privileged feminism, white feminism. Means you leave a lot of people within the black feminist movement who actually are more vulnerable in these cases, people who are victimized by the structure to begin with. No, thank you, right? But let's move on to a few rebuttals, right? Because this side told you there's already enough women fighting in the political sphere. And we don't think it's true. Because if you think
about it, they also agree there are also males to represent them, right? And we think that's a problem because the point which you only rely on your male continents inside the political spectrum, you then get some form of representation. That's when they'll start to hijack whatever discussion that you want to put in the political sphere, right? We think the point which discussions that happen, we think discussions in political spheres don't get traction because males in that political sphere always want to dictate you, right? Which means it's important for us, or it's important for this person to take that part as a politician, to take that support, or at least have some form of political structure or political representation to allow that discourse to happen, right? But there's the other thing here. It says that there's already an incentive in the companies and that they're already doing some form of check and balance, right? If there's already a check and balance with business companies, then we don't think this debate is necessary. But we'll then still engage with this idea that companies, at least there's less incentives for males to hurt you and things like that, right? We think that's not true. We think in companies, it's more likely for the CEO of males inside that company to coerce you, right? Because at the end of the day, what's more important to these people are jobs, which means that whatever they have to do, they have to protect themselves because they have to protect their jobs. In your world, you have more coercion, but in our world, you have people who represent themselves because they know there are people on the ground who are relying on them, which means they've already got the political structure for people to have their support, right? Let's look at this other thing they talk about, right? Because you see people who fight for a party, like this CK for clothing is very funny lah. Because you see people fight for a party and not for feminists, right? But that's very untrue. If you fight in a party, you can still become a feminist. You know there's a delineation of you being a CEO, then you fight for the movement. We think you can still do that in a political sphere, right? We think even if that's true, we think at the end of the day, the ability for you to make more, like even if people on the ground hate you because you're fighting for the party, at least you are that person who can make change. At least you are that person who changes jurisdiction laws, who's always biased towards victims of rape and things like that. It can do, and what a CEO cannot do, right? But let's look into my arguments, right? Before that, yes.
You see, we don't argue that you can still be a feminist, you can be the most hardcore feminist there, and we concede to that. But please answer this question. Like, parties such as the Democratic Party are already famous for having like abortion laws and stuff like that. How would having a woman there increase the magnitude of that fight?
And this is my argument, and it relates to his life. As a CEO, the only policies or change you're able to make for women are job opportunities or minimum wage or abuse only in that workforce, which means it's only central to the people who are privileged enough to get into these positions to begin with. Means you're going to leave out a lot of vulnerable things that a lot of feminists fight for. And what are these things, right? In a comparative, you will not have this that helps every spectrum of feminism. The amount will not be catered to everyone, right? Because you lose focus on the most vulnerable communities within your movement itself. You think black feminists fight for right to education, right? In a comparative to your world people already have right to education, but our world, we don't have that. And we need that political change. We think in our world, there's no right or proper education for our feminists, right? You don't get to do that, right? These are the only things that, these are the things that a lot of even influential CEOs cannot do. Within our world, change can happen because in a comparative, our change will not be like every time someone wants to bring out a discourse, people will not hijack the discourse because in your world, in your world, people will not listen to your discourse because people will think, oh, it's profit-minded, or this is only to make marketing or things like that, right? And this in our world, even if it's the weirdest discourse for feminism, people will still listen because it's going to do something for women. It's going to be a structural change that's going to affect everyone. And that's when our discourse will make more impact, right? But then let's look even more on this idea of discourse, right? Because even if you don't think actions will happen, we think our discourse is far more impactful in our world, right? Because you're able to convince people to do something within the political structure, right? Because we have to understand what change can happen in our world, right? It's more than just wages. It's the fact that you're able to tell the jurisdiction on how do you then cater for women who are always victims in court, right? Or allocate what kinds of proper welfare you need with the women who are always victimized by this welfare structure to begin with, right? These are the kinds of things that you're able to fight within a political structure, right? In that sense, we're able to hold women in this sense, and we can still fight for minimum wage, right? Because even if you wanted to fight for minimum wage, it will still happen on our side because labor laws are things that the state dictate, and it's not something that CEOs can do. Thank you.
teens spend their time about whether affirmative actions is good. But we think CG can tell you this is not the debate. This debate is about whether feminists can progress their fight better in politics arena or in business arena, like what stated in the motion, right? CG wins this debate because CG is the only team that gets this debate right to begin with. See, also, I would like to point out, all never engage with what my member has told you, how the politicians are going, their decisions are going to be swayed by the political party, and how it's going to harm the feminists even worse, right? I hope the week can do a better job. We think all is always smart to unnecessarily add some descriptions into the info site by telling that they are not okay with these feminists to enter this business because we sell feminist product with feminist tax. It means that they concede that this feminist needs getting into this business, apart from this kind of business that capitalize on feminism, is all good to begin with. Then CGs will say, fine. The context in the info site never said that, and we don't think it's necessary for us to prove that it is okay to capitalize on feminism. This feminist will get into a business that is not related to capitalization on feminism. So we think that their case necessary fall on their side. Also, they talk about something like CEO is going to be busy. So we don't know like why politicians can be very free on their side. Or also talk about how publicity and how relatable people is. We don't think politicians are relatable at all. And I don't think any one of us here can relate to Donald Trump, can relate to Hillary Clinton to begin with. They talk about publicity. All things talk about publicity. We will prove to you how your image is going to go down in my speech. If there is a bad publicity, we would rather not want that publicity to harm the feminist movement to begin with. CEO also talk about how businessmen cannot be feminist. We think that's necessary for Emma Watson, who works in entertainment industry, is necessarily a feminist icon. CEO for Google is also a feminist that fired his member just because they violate gender equality. They talk about representation. We are fine with representation. Other women, apart from feminist icon, can enter this kind of political arena, and we think it's fine. Because feminist icon is necessarily an exception, because I will tell you how it will jeopardize the fight, like my partner has already told you, right? We think the trade-off is very good on our side. The trade-off is there will be less one female politician, and in the change, we get a feminist icon who can consistently act against the state interest, and we think it's very important, right? Also, the only issue in today's debate, why the change or outside ones will never ever happen, and why is external pressure coming from outside way better than coming from the political party itself? First reason, we have to know how the nature of politics is already very dirty and fucked up. If feminists enter the atmosphere of politics, they cannot maintain their stance. Feminists have to think of political interests. All members of political party has to act based on that particular political interest to begin with. We think that this necessarily gives the feminist icon a responsibility and obligation to do that. They will have extra burden to fulfill that responsibility. Also, she will necessarily live in a very toxic atmosphere where people consistently have discourses on how to beat another political party, how to politically assassinate another political party. And we think that this kind of discourses will take away the discourses that we want, which is how to better fight for feminism. Also, we think that it shifts away the feminist focus on how to better advance the people fight to become how to act in the best interest of that particular political party. When there's a policy that feminists want to progress, she need to talk about that and discuss with all the white male individuals in that particular political parties. And we do not see any incentives coming from all the white privileged male people to agree into this kind of feminist actions to begin with. So we would rather this feminist can actively do upon her will to begin with. So we think that this also directly engage with all cases where people on the ground are going to pressure these feminists. If the feminists go against that particular political party in order to fight a feminist policy to outcome, best case, she will lose traction and support from their own party, and whatever benefits that will happen on their side is never going to happen. Worst case, they will be kicked out of that particular party. So on the comparison, when you become CEO, the people you are working with will have no incentive to hinder your fight, because work is separate from your daily life, right? Apart from your Nobody cares as long as you do your work. Nobody cares what you do in your leisure time to begin with. Because feminist policy does not directly harm the business of that particular company, we don't think your colleague will necessarily have any incentive to actively go against your movement to begin with. You don't have to compete and to prove why feminist policy won't harm your business, because it has literally no relation at all. The feminist has the freedom to talk about the policy of a particular state. The comparison is very clear, like what my member has told you. If the state introduces a policy, if political party in power introduces a policy which actively harms women's rights, that feminist, if he were to be in that particular party, he cannot actively condemn her own party policy to begin with. But on our side, at least we get a freedom of speech that the feminists can actively talk against that party to begin with. Yes, Trish.
If you don't have that feminist, you're going to proceed with these biased policies anyway. At least on our side, you have someone who wants to fight for it. At least have the discourse to do something about it.
We think the moment you enter the political atmosphere, it's not only the politicians are biased to begin with. You also become biased. Even if you don't become biased, we already told you that you are going to be fired from that particular party to begin with. Also, they never prove to us like how that political party necessarily have an incentive to actively support this feminist policy to begin with. So we don't see what happened under what will happen under their side. It's very on a comparison, it's very unlikely that your colleague will do anything to you, because the social movement has zero in a relationship with your business. They gain literally nothing by stopping you to fight for feminism. When the more you fight for it, the more popular you will get. People will more likely look up to you in Google. You will appear more on news. The popularity of that company will reach out to even more people. So we think that your colleague doesn't not only have an incentive to stop you, but also have an incentive to give moral support to you to advance your fight to begin with. So we think this comparison is very important, right? So secondly, people talk about how this is going to portray a better image. So we think that this feminist, upon which she enters this kind of political arena, she will be classified as opportunists who portray feminism just to enter the particular political arena to begin with. So we would rather not harm the image of the feminism as a whole.
Being in politics gives you the same amount of popularity, or even more than being in CEO, right? That straight away counter with whatever the government said, right? But before that, let me settle with what with OG's case, right? Their whole case, they started with affirmative action, right? Where they keep saying that they wouldn't take the affirmative action, and it's not the right way to do it. Other than they still want to go for CEO, right? Let's see, even if you become CEO, right, you'll do affirmative decisions anyway. You'll do decisions that cater towards feminists anyway. So how does that not make you different from choosing a politic way, right? We don't care if being affirmative is what puts you in the political world. If that's assuming that there's no other way for you to become influential, or for you to put forward your policies, we think that it is justified for anyone to use affirmative action to go into the political world, right?
at least, right, in political world, you're able to influence the state, right? Like what Trish said before, you have a say in a state's decision, which actually controls the jurisdiction, right? You actually have a say in policies about wage gap, birth control, and women's education, and etc., right? So we think that being affirmative is okay, right? So they also talk about how they did not want a narrative that a woman did not earn his position in politics, right? We think that narrative doesn't really matter anyway, because what makes you earn your position at the end of the day, right? If Donald Trump can become president, right, how does that even make difference, right? If he's a president, why couldn't a girl who's more powerful or who's more influential than him cannot be a politician, right? Whatever they want to cater under their side, such as like representation of women in companies, they want to cater towards harassment and stuff like that, right? We can still cater in our side, right? You can still have all those things under our side. You can still have those policies to push towards that. Let's say if this woman who's getting to be a politician, she doesn't know, like you want to say that she doesn't know what a job industry goes through, right? That's her job as a politician, to go on the ground. As a politician, she will be forced to go on the ground, to talk to people on the ground, to understand what every single person is going through. So she will understand. So she's going to push towards labor policies, right? That's going to cater more towards women, right? So we think that's not even a case already, because you've already catered that in our side, right? Let's say, right, even if still they want to fight, right, that they don't really we cannot provide that, right? At least if she's not able to go to the level where she can push policies, at least she's still there to say to people, like, let's say if in a politician world, she's the only woman in a room full of women, at least she's still there, she still can get to say, right, look, this is what woman goes through. If you don't give a damn, I give a damn, right? At least she's able to voice out, at least she's able to put this idea into the man's head, that these things happens. And you never know, if not today, maybe tomorrow someone else will come and replace her. It will be easier for them to actually go and push towards policies, because the idea is already there in their head to begin with, right? So we think that doesn't really matter. No, thank you. Whereas in O's case, they're fighting. They're saying that, oh, if you become a politician, you're not representing a feminist movement anymore. You're more towards you're more on a party agenda anymore, right? We say that even now Hillary Clinton didn't want, she's still counted as a feminist icon, right? She's still a feminist icon. So that doesn't even make sense to begin with, right? But you see, at the end of the day, feminists fight because they want changes, right? They want more policies that protect them, right? They want a representation of political change that always. So they always push to cater to all the feminist movement, right? That means these feminists, they heavily rely on politicians. They heavily rely on the decisions made by the politicians, right? So we say that having a politician in the world is way better than not having one at all, right? Let's say like what Mitra said earlier, right? Even if the discussions are hijacked by males in a patriarchy society, at least we have discussions, right? At least we have discourse. At least our discourse can make people on the ground lobby for the state even more, right? At least, let's say if these politicians is kicked out, like they were saying that, oh, if you don't listen to them, you'll be kicked out, right? Let's say even if this person kicked out, she as a politician, she already has enough popularity to go on the ground and tell people, you see, these are what they're doing in the parliament. These are what they kick. This is what they're doing in the parliament. This is not right. She can even turn into activist afterwards, right? Even let's assume the best case scenario that she gets kicked out of the political world, right? She still have the platform to be activist, to be somebody who actually can still bring changes in women's world. Rather than in CEO, you cannot even do anything. I still think that CEO doesn't provide popularity that much, right? Because who even knows who Vivi Yusof is compared to Sharizad, right? let's again deal with their best case scenario, right? On the OG's best case scenario, right? Assuming that there's a change that they can do in their wage gap and their job opportunities, right? But the thing is that, like what she said, they only benefits the small, they only benefits the privileged feminists, right? They only benefits the feminist, white feminists, right? They cannot cater to every single feminist agenda, right? As a politician, and at least in our under our side, you still get to push towards every agenda of white feminist one, right? Even like let's look at our worst case scenario again. Like even if she couldn't push towards policies, or she get bashed or kicked out, like I said earlier, she still have a say in everything she does, right? As a politician member, she still have the say, right? So whatever, if she gets it or not, at least she gets it thrown on the table for people to see that these things exist, and it harms women in real world, right? With that, I rest my case.